All right, today we're going to talk about chemical equations, and what chemical equations are basically the recipe for chemical reactions that we're going to look at. So, chemical equations are going to have several parts to them. So this is an example of a chemical equation right here. It's got whole bunch of information here. So we've got information on the left side here, we've got an arrow in the middle, and then we've got some more information. So each one of these parts has a different name, but all of this together is called a chemical equation. Okay, so a chemical equation is this whole string of symbols and numbers that gives us information about chemical reactions. So we'll go ahead and start talking about each of the separate parts here. The first part that we want to talk about is the left side of this arrow. The left side of this arrow is called the reactants. Okay, the reactants, what they are is basically the stuff that you're putting into the recipe. So if you're thinking about this as like a cooking lesson, you're going to have, if you're trying to bake a cake, you're going to need things like flour, sugar, eggs. So you're going to put all that stuff into a mix, and then you're going to end up with a cake. Well, this is the sugar, the flour. These are the ingredients that we're putting into our cake. Then the right side of this chemical equation, this is our products. Okay, so the right side of this arrow is called the products. The products then are what we get out. So we've put these ingredients in, and we've got these that came out of the chemical reaction. So going back to our cake example, this would be the cake. Okay, this would be the stuff that comes out. Now the middle part here, this middle part, this arrow means yields. That tells us yields. So what we're saying here is the reactants produce the products. Okay, so this arrow means produces, basically. So this is telling us that these reactants go in, they have some sort of reaction, and these are what are left at the end. Now in here we've got different parts. So if we look at this part right here, this part right here is a chemical formula. Okay, a chemical formula is basically what the compound is made of. Okay, so this, for example, it's made of sodium, oxygen, and hydrogen. So each one of those symbols then represents an element. Okay, so for example here, this capital H tells us that that element in that compound is hydrogen. So this chemical symbol, each one of these is a chemical symbol that tells us an element that's involved in this reaction. Now we've also got some numbers in here. For example, the numbers that are kind of below the line, that are to the right of the chemical symbols, these are called subscripts. Okay, subscripts tell us how many atoms of each one of those elements are in this compound or in this chemical formula. So, for example, in this chemical formula right here, in this compound, we have 2 sodiums and 2 oxygens. So there's 2 sodium atoms and 2 oxygen atoms. Now, in front of some of these, we have what are called coefficients. Coefficients tell us the number of molecules. So, for example, here, for every one molecule of this compound, we have two molecules of water. So this 2 tells us that there are 2 molecules of that atom or of that compound. So if we don't have a coefficient in front of one of these, we know that that means that there is one molecule in that case. If it doesn't have a subscript after it, again, we know that means that there is one of that atom, one atom of that element in this compound. So now you have some information about chemical equations and some of the vocabulary that goes along with our chemical equations.